Manx Radio's Update with Dave Moore.
The time is 5 o'clock. You're listening to Manx Radio. I am Dave Moore, and this is Update. Welcome to the programme. Half an hour of the latest news in the Isle of Man, plus sport, business, travel updates, along with the newsmakers in person. Coming up, a series of emails have revealed NHS Trust forced Manx Care to backtrack on plans to cut surgical operations. Meanwhile, an MHK is calling for the island to follow the UK in scrapping NHS England by removing Manx Care. And should there be a financial charge when submitting a Freedom of Information request with the government? That's all coming up in the next half hour. But first of all, with the Update News headlines is Chanel Saku. Fastamai.
Manx Care was forced to backtrack on plans to halt non-emergency surgeries after strong opposition from NHS trusts in England. Emails seen by Manx Radio shows hospitals warned the decision would leave Isle of Man patients without vital treatment. Liverpool University Hospital said the move was not appropriate and urged Manx Care to introduce a notice period. Elsewhere, the Chief Minister has admitted it's been a hard road since COVID-19. This week marks 5 years since government took its first steps at protecting the Manx borders and people from the pandemic.
It had knocked the economy. I think it did knock businesses. A lot of people who, for whatever reason, I think decided to change their lives after or during the pandemic earlier than intended.
And an MHK is calling for the Isle of Man to consider following the UK and scrapping its arm's-length healthcare provider. Julie Edge has welcomed the announcement that NHS England is to close, with the UK Health Department taking over responsibility for delivering health services across.
I'm so pleased of what's happened in the UK this week, and hopefully it'll focus the minds of, the Chief Minister. We need that decision here and now to make for the people of the Isle of Man. We should be either going one way or the other.
In international news, a British paedophile who spent 27 years on the run in Thailand has been found guilty of and admitted to 97 offences. Richard Burrows was arrested at Heathrow Airport a year ago. Downing Street's expecting more than 30 countries to be involved in enforcing a peace deal in Ukraine if one's agreed. Some will provide troops on the ground while others will contribute logistics. And queues in shops could become shorter and quicker, and it might get easier to sign up to a mortgage. Regulators that have met the UK Chancellor to explain the impact of their ideas to boost economic growth. Those are your headlines. News at 6.
Thank you, Chanel. On to the weather. Dry for this evening and tonight. Clear skies at times. Moderate easterly winds. Minimum temperatures overnight 3 Celsius. Continuing dry again tomorrow. Plenty of sunshine, although feeling a bit breezy and fresh east or southeast winds at first. Top temperature of 10 Celsius. And the high pressure remaining dominant for much of the week, bringing more settled weather.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
TE Carbon provide new memorial stones, grave renovations, new inscriptions and fire hearths. Visit us at Hope Street, Castletown or at Broadway, Douglas, or call 844 440. TE Carbon, here when you need us.
Most builders start with a hammer and saw. Manx Construction start with ideas and imagination. For new build, extension or home office, Manx Construction offer full service from planning to completion. Call Tony on 452 688.
We all need peace of mind. That's where Peace of Mind Manx Will Writing Services can help you. From just £149 plus VAT. Call 671 001 or go to peaceofmind.co.im.
At Bond Fabrics, we're not just a fabric shop. As well as curtains and upholstery and dress and costume fabrics, we've knitting and crocheting wools, made-to-measure curtain and blind service, plus poles and tracks. Visit Strand Street, Douglas, call 611856 or see bondfabrics.im.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
We begin with the news. It's been revealed Manx Care attempted to halt all off-island non-emergency surgeries with immediate effect in late January, but was forced to backtrack after strong opposition from NHS trusts in England. A series of emails seen by Manx Radio revealed just how those discussions unfolded. Christian Jones has been looking through them and he joins me now. Christian, Talk us through what's happened.
Well, Dave, like you said, this all started when Manx Care was facing financial pressures and it decided to stop funding non-emergency surgeries for Isle of Man patients at NHS hospitals in England. And that meant that procedures not classed as an emergency or trauma-related would be put on hold with no prior warning. The emails that we've seen today show that this decision came as a shock to NHS trusts, with some responding almost immediately to say they didn't believe that Manx Care had fully considered the consequences.
Wow, so how strongly then did the NHS trusts push back on this?
Well, the first big reaction came from Alderhay Children's Hospital, and they warned that tens and tens of Isle of Man children were already in England expecting surgery, chemotherapy, dialysis or outpatient care, and they asked whether Manx Care actually understood the full impact of its decision. Then Liverpool University Hospitals also got involved, urging Manx Care to rethink the suspension of non-urgent operations. They said that at the very least, patients should be given proper notice because many already had made arrangements for their procedures, expecting them to go ahead.
So, how did Manx Care respond to that?
Initially, it stood firm. Internal emails show that Manx Care's Director for Financial Recovery instructed his team to press ahead with the suspension, warning NHS Trust that they would not be paid for any procedures carried out outside of emergency cases. But then under increasing pressure, Manx Care did eventually soften its stance. After those warnings from the NHS trusts, they extended the cut-off date by almost 2 weeks, moving it to the 1st of February to allow a short notice period.
So just trying to get this, does this mean all non-emergency surgery was eventually stopped?
No, that's where the real shift happened. In a follow-up email, Manx Care's Executive Director of Health Services actually instructed hospitals to proceed on based on a clinical priority. But that further frustrated NHS trusts, who told him that should have been made clear from the start and had caused unnecessary confusion and disruption.
Reading between the lines, if that's the right phrase to use here, it sounds like this was a major miscalculation by Manx Care.
Well, that does appear to be how NHS trusts are viewing it. The emails show clear frustration from hospitals in England, not just about the financial implications, but also about the immediate impact on patients and the way it was being communicated. Manx Care has since acknowledged that this was, in their words, a short-term solution to their financial struggles, but even they admitted it wasn't ideal for patients or clinicians.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Thank you, Christian. And MHK is calling for government to follow the United Kingdom by scrapping its arm's-length healthcare board. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced last week NHS England would be shutting down, with the UK Health Department taking back responsibility for running the service across. Oncan MHK Julie Edge told Phil Gaughan the Isle of Man should look at doing the same.
From the outset, I've not been in favour of the structure of Manx Care because everything wasn't devolved to them. It wasn't like a full statutory board model, as in the MEA or the post office, so you couldn't really hold them to account because you've got that muddying in between. I do feel for Manx Care in the structure they're in. However, I do feel that it appears to have just gone off like a juggernaut. You know, they're saying they need to turn a juggernaut. They've gone off like a juggernaut and thought they could just do NHS trusts. This is what we are. This is what we're doing. And we're going to do the layers and layers of bureaucracy and management that they have in the NHS in the UK. I'm so pleased of what's happened in the UK this week, and hopefully it'll focus the minds of our leader, the Chief Minister. I did try to sort of get an emergency question with regards to what will happen in the Isle of Man. We need that decision here and now to make for the people of the Isle of Man. We should be either going one way or the other. We've either got the DHSC with the professionals working within the DHSC rather than just civil servants, or we have Manx Care and do it as a full devolved model that they are accountable. They're held to account financially for the good governance, and I'm quite shocked at some of the information that's been coming out on that area.
You're going to hear more from Julie Edge on Agenda, which is coming up with Phil Gaughan at 5:30 here on Manx Radio. A Manx charity says it will continue to stand up for the rights of cancer patients on the island. It's as a planned protest against reducing the frequency of breast cancer screenings here has been cancelled after reassurances from government that any changes would be properly communicated and consulted on. 3 charities, including the Manx Breast Cancer Support Group, had been due to take part. Julie Stokes is from the support group and has been telling Amy Griffiths where things stand now.
We met with the Health Minister Claire Christian and the Cabinet Office Minister David Ashford, and we're really pleased to say that we now have a written assurance from them both that no changes will be made to the current 2-yearly screening programme.
How much of an achievement is that for you, and how much of a relief, I suppose, for you and the charity?
It's a massive relief. It's a massive relief for everybody. And can I please thank everybody who's helped us to get to this point? I'm sure that, the pressure from the public, and that's what's helped us get to where we are currently.
And just remind us, what were some of your main concerns about reducing the frequency of these screenings?
Basically that by changing the screening programme from 2-yearly to 3-yearly, you are leaving the breast cancer undetected for a further year, which is going to have a massive impact on outcomes for patients. Massive.
What we've seen from the Department of Health, it's not suggesting that the review is not going to happen. There is still going to be a review that takes place. So what kind of things do you expect the review to raise?
I'm more than happy with the review. The review is really to look at all the island screening. There's a lot of issues with other screening programmes. So this review is going to look at all the islands screening programmes, bowel, cervical, breast, and obviously we've got future screening programmes that the UK are bringing in the pipeline, so we'd be hoping that they're going to look at those as well. But yes, we're going to be part of that review, and that's what's important. There's going to be consultation between the charities and the major stakeholders in this, and we're all going to be part of the decisions that are made.
You're listening to Update on Manx Radio. Should we have to pay to submit Freedom of Information requests? That's what a new consultation is asking, as government says the number of complex requests, which take more than 18 hours to process, is growing. Christian Jones has this report.
FOI requests allow individuals to ask public authorities for access to information held by them free of charge. It's seen as a way of ensuring and promoting transparency and accountability from government. The number of requests received by the Isle of Man government has increased by around 17% year on year since 2018, and government says demand on departments and boards is increasing. Last year, it cost a little over £181,000 to respond to all 982 requests submitted, a process that took up to 5,300 hours, the equivalent of 700 workdays. The costs are calculated based on a £34 hourly rate. Notably, though, government says almost half of overall requests were submitted by the same small group of individuals. The consultation asks for feedback on what constitutes a reasonable fee, discretion to waive or reduce fees, and what's a reasonable number of requests one person can make in a calendar year. One avenue up for consideration is imposing a cost limit. That means there would be a cap on the amount of time and staff resources spent on individual requests. Government says if it was to go down that route, it would follow Jersey's model. The Channel Islands has a cost limit of 12.5 hours, and requests may be refused under the FOI legislation if it's estimated it'll take longer than that. Likewise, if it's estimated to take fewer than 12.5 hours, the request will be answered free of charge. If used here, a cost limit of 15 hours would be applied, the equivalent of £510. One topic not included in the consultation is whether certain organisations not deemed public authorities should be subject to FOIs. For example, questions have been asked in recent years over whether the Isle of Man steam packet should be made to answer the requests. The ferry operator is owned by the Isle of Man government but at arm's length and not a public authority. The consultation closes on the 9th of May.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Christian Jones reporting there. And the good news is everything's on time down at Ronaldsway, and the Manxman is already docked in Douglas.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with
Quayside. Now, can you believe it's been half a decade since this?
The Council of Ministers met today to establish measures to protect the island and its residents in light of the developing global coronavirus pandemic. The 2020 Isle of Man TT is cancelled. Testing in the community will be stepped up with immediate effect.
The first confirmed case of COVID-19 has now been identified on the island.
So, on this day in 2020, anyone arriving in the island was forced to self-isolate for at least a fortnight due to the rising COVID-19 pandemic. One of the first cancellations to be announced, as we heard, was the TT, followed by local government elections and sporting fixtures. 5 years on, Manx Radio has been speaking with three of the main decision makers at the time about what they could have done differently. Let's hear from former Health Minister, now Cabinet Office Minister David Ashford, former Treasury Minister, now Chief Minister Alfred Cannon, and the man who was Chief Minister at the time, Howard Quayle. First of all, Mr Ashford.
Would have actually shut us down earlier. As we now know from Freedom of Information requests that have released the minutes, I went to Council of Ministers in the March. That's the one thing that, from my point of view, I think we should have done.
Some things we got right, some of the other things we didn't get right. The Isle of Man was second only to New Zealand from a death rate. It was incredibly low, 140 odd, far too many, but much lower than anywhere in the adjacent isle. But there were other areas that I felt we could have done better. For example, the support of residential nursing and nursing homes. That obviously was clearly shown we hadn't got it quite right. Again, the transportation with the steam packet, mistakes were made there. You know, I'm happy to admit that we weren't perfect. We did our very, very best, but there was still room for improvement.
There was lots of vulnerable people that were impacted. We did tragically lose members of our community to the virus, and that mustn't be forgotten. One of the things COVID has done is it has left not just us, but the rest of the world as well, better positioned and better prepared should there be a similar outbreak in the future.
In some ways, actually, I feel it's helped us have a more mature approach and understanding of the value of our borders and the need to look after them and keeping ourselves alert to what is going on globally.
Whilst it was a very traumatic time, I was incredibly proud of our people, the people of the Isle of Man, and how they responded. They followed the rules. Yes, we were fairly strict if you did break the rules, but the vast, vast majority of people followed the rules. And as a result of that, they had a significant period where the Isle of Man was the envy of the world, where we could continue with our lives. But yeah, we were lucky that, as I say, the people of the Isle of Man, our government workers, our healthcare workers, but not just them, everyone stepped up to the mark. And as a result, we came out of it much better than initially I thought we might do.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
The charity Manx Support for Ukraine's hitting back at an MHK's comments questioning the validity of the war, calling them dangerous. Last week, Stu Peters shared a Facebook post casting doubt on the Western narrative, suggesting the conflict in Ukraine was engineered by the West. Although the member for Middle admits he has little knowledge of Ukrainian or Russian politics, he says he's been suspicious for some time, and the post he shared only reinforced his concerns. Carolina Davison, a trustee of Manx Support for Ukraine, says Russian propaganda has intensified, particularly since political tensions escalated in the White House.
When you first see these things, you know, the emotions run high, and the reality, it's simple. There are opinions and there are facts. And the problem is people don't form their opinions on the facts, but the other way around, don't they? So, and particularly it is dangerous when they're a public figure without knowing the facts. Admittedly, he said he doesn't know much about Ukrainian or Russian politics. Hence, he doesn't know much about the history. Sharing a post like that, it just creates a conflict, isn't it? So because people jump on it and express their opinions without knowing exactly, you know, what's going on. The reality is it goes way deeper in the history, and unless you know the history of both countries, it's very difficult to comment. Mr. Peters, if you'd like to speak to Ukrainians and hear their side of the story, you know, he's welcome to. We can organize the meeting. We can invite a few Ukrainians who actually been through this, and but also, you know, he needs to look deeper into the facts and into the history to see where it started, really.
We obviously know that a ceasefire deal could be on the horizon, and naturally there are Ukrainians who fled to the Isle of Man soon after the war started. Does this give hope to the Ukrainian community?
Realistically, I doubt it, because ceasefire has been broken by Russia many, many, many times. I mean, we can see from experience, from a long history of Ukrainians living next to Russia, that their word is worth nothing. I don't think we can be optimistic about it. I can't see it happening, and I can't not see Putin agree to ceasefire.
You're listening to Manx Radio. This is Update. Just getting a message that there are long traffic queues by Kirkbraden Church, which we understand there may have been some kind of collision, and there are reports that an ambulance is heading that way. Nothing confirmed, but maybe if you're on the road and you're listening, just avoid the Kirkbraden Church area. PokerStars has surrendered its licence for the Isle of Man's Gambling Supervision Commission, but its parent company insists it won't impact customers or employment levels in the island. Sean Cowper reports.
The GSC's website shows the licence, which was in the name of Rational Entertainment Enterprises Limited, ended on the 8th of March, having been held for almost 20 years. In a statement issued to Manx Radio, a Flutter spokesperson confirmed the move comes as part of an ongoing programme to optimise PokerStars' operating model, and it's been decided the Isle of Man B2B licence is no longer needed. It goes on to say this decision has no impact on our colleagues on the Isle of Man, while players will continue to play under the UK B2C licence as they do today and will not experience any changes. PokerStars says it has found the Isle of Man regulatory relationship constructive and mutually beneficial over the years. PokerStars headquarters have been situated in Onchan since 2005, while it holds licences with a number of jurisdictions.
The island's most prestigious cultural award, the Raiblin Vannan, has been presented to Annie Kiswick. Here's Culture Vannan's director, Dr. Brisha Madrell.
A small panel made up of different learned societies, Manx societies, come together and they make the decision. And the reason why they chose Annie is because she's quite wonderful at music and song and poetry and folklore and literature and performing and everything else you can imagine.
I have my moments, I think, is the best answer to that. But thank you. Yeah, that's a very generous assessment. But those certainly are the things that I spent an awful lot of my life doing in various ways over many years, yes. There are so many people who are working for Manx culture in so many different ways now, as always, and don't all get the recognition that they deserve at all. But so I just feel really I'm part of a much bigger thing, part of a jigsaw really, and lots of pieces to it. And there are other pieces that will get their time in the limelight, if you like, I hope. I suppose coming from a small place like most of us there, I felt and have felt in the past that the Isle of Man has often been pushed to the side in terms of culture. You know, your poor language, you've not got much of a history, you haven't got this, you haven't got that. And sometimes Manx people themselves have defined themselves that way. So I think there's a sort of rebel instinct in me that thinks, no, it doesn't have to be like that. Why can't we be people who can do things with our language and our music? Why not? Why not have a go? And I suppose that's my motivation, is to have a go and see what happens. I don't feel particularly skilled, but I just go for it. And, you do learn as you do things. So, yeah, my motivation is, I think, to show we're still here in some ways.
Sport next, Darren Timpson.
Good evening. Starting with SC Isle of Man. Manager Paul Jones has said he's proud of his side following a double header at the weekend. His team had to come from behind in both games to rescue draws against Pilkington and Prestwich Hayes in the North West Counties Football League. The Ravens boss praised the efforts of its players.
It shows us a lot of kind of resilience in the group and a lot of willingness to work hard for each other. It's good. I just wish we'd have actually got over the line, because we've been too good recently not to do that, and just soft goals are hurting us again.
So for that last 5 games, then, say maybe the squad is just a bit tired, needs a break after a long season. So how do you all get around that after a long season that's still got a few games to run?
We have to manage it carefully. Usually this time of the season you can kind of back off a little bit in terms of training load, so we won't train Tuesday and get everyone together on Thursday to give them a little bit of break away physically and mentally from football. And then we've just got to we've just got to get ourselves up. You can't be perfect frame of mind or physical fitness every time you play football, and that's why good players cost good money, because they can just keep going and it's just relentless, and they're relentless, and that's a lesson we're still learning at this level of football. That relentlessness, you can't switch off for a moment. The teams are more than good enough and got good players that will cause you problems, and we need to build that into our game over the next 5 weeks, even though we're feeling a bit flat, even though we're a bit down on energy and maybe confidence at times because we're not winning games we think we should be. That's a really good opportunity to develop the skills we need to stick together, work hard, grind out results, because we'll need that next season in spades if we want to really push on to the top end of the league.
Ravens boss Paul Jones. Staying with football, and Corinthians have been crowned champions of the Women's FA Cup. They got past Mulu by 5-2, and a brace from Kieran Morgan helped the Douglas side on their way to clinching the trophy. Elsewhere, in the men's Arden and Drogheda Division 2, Bradden have sealed promotion back to the Premier League. They beat Colby 3-1 to make the step back up with 3 games to go. Peel have taken another step closer to claiming the Canada Life Premier League trophy after a 6-0 win over Moran. They could be crowned champions next weekend if results go their way, as they sit 4 points above Corinthians with 3 games left. In hockey, the league leaders in the men's and women's Premier Divisions are also on the brink of silverware. Castletown ladies are a win away from finishing top after standings after they beat Valkyries on Saturday. Backazay are also in touching distance from the men's Premier League trophy after victory over Valkyries B. In cycling, Max Walker and Becky Story have been in action over the weekend. Walker took part in the Paris-Nice Tour, but unfortunately for the Manx rider, he was unable to complete the 8-stage event. Story, meanwhile, came 65th in a one-day event in Italy on Sunday from Luino to Chitiglio. And in rugby, Vagabonds ladies have won their final game of the season. They managed to complete the double over Littleborough in the women's NC2 North-South. The result sees them move temporarily into second in the standings, but rivals Eccles still have 2 games to play and could take the runners-up spot.
And that's it for Update Today. Compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thank you, newsreader Chanel Saku. And the stories you've heard on this programme, much more Manx news, plus interviews, podcasts, the web's biggest source of Manx videos, are all at manxradio.com and via the free Manx Radio app. So give Manx Radio a like on Facebook, follow us on X, and subscribe to the very, very popular Manx Radio YouTube channel. And if you have a comment on the news agenda, a story you think we should be covering, or just want to say hello from near or far, email update@manxradio.com. Coming up next at 5:30, it's Agenda with Phil Gaughan. But for myself, Dave Moore, that's it for now. Join me again tomorrow at 5 o'clock for more updates.
Next on Man in Line is Chairman of Ramsey Commissioners Rob Cowell. With local authorities' functions being affected by the Local Government Amendment Bill 2023, what's the future for Royal Ramsey? And as a member of the Northern District Civic Amenity Site Joint Committee, what does he think will happen to the site? And the reform of rates, the thought of 1,000-foot wind turbines visible from shore, and 20-mile-per-hour speed limits, plus those ever-present brownfield sites in Ramsey. Talk to Ramsey Commissioners Chairman Rob Cowell on Man in Line tomorrow at midday on smart devices, on air, online, on Manx Radio.
You'll be happy, roadworthy and safe when you choose Quayside Tyre and Service Centre on South Quay Industrial Estate, where trained technicians go above and beyond to give you the best customer experience. With any service, they'll provide you with a video of any defects that need attention and will only carry out the work if you are happy. And ask how you can spread the cost interest-free. For a comprehensive range of services and more information, call 664417 or visit online.
Quayside!